Okay, hello and welcome to Plugin Along, a stream dedicated to LOTRO plugins. Last time, nope, I still got my stream open on the other screen. Okay, last time on Plugin Along, we switched things up by taking a look at Vinny's birding log plugin. We created a list of design goals based on how the birding log plugin currently works and how the birding hobby seems to work. And between streams, I did get started on a visual timer for birding, because that was one of the biggest things that I wanted. So today we're going to start by reviewing what that looks like and how the code works, and then work on some other items from our list of goals. As always, feel free to jump in chat with your thoughts and questions. Real Tough asked, have you seen Fisherman? Maybe you can use something from that. So Vinny basically cloned his fishing log plugin to make the birding log plugin. So if that's the one you're talking about, then I have a feeling I have seen something like that. Let's go ahead and switch on over here where we have placed ourselves in Glenhelig, because I haven't finished my birding deeds here anyway, so I might as well make progress. Okay, so we're going to come into the caret menu, come into System, Plugin Manager, and we have Birding Log. When you first launch Birding Log, if the window was closed, is closed, you can just type /BLW to make it appear. This is the Birding Log with the changes that I have done so far. So one of the big things I wanted was a timer, but I didn't want the timer to activate incorrectly. So, hobbies are not skills and do not seem to show up in your list of trained skills or active skills or even your untrained skills. It doesn't show up as a skill, which is a shame because it feels very skill adjacent. But that's not how we can get it. So we can't tell when the hobby skill has been activated, but we could have the player tell us which button they're going to press to activate the hobby. And we can keep an eye on that, and if you have the birding kit equipped and you press that button, we can just assume that's what you're doing. So let's go ahead and get my oops, let's not get a turtle. Let's go ahead and get my birding kit, which is here, my basic birding kit. Now we want to be cognizant of fishing poles. There's not just a normal fishing pole, there's other fishing poles, and that's probably true of birding kits. There's only one birding kit right now, but maybe in the future, maybe a woodworker will be able to craft some more advanced birding kits. They might already be able to, but if so, I have not seen that. So we're going to equip our basic birding kit, and as we're writing code, we're going to be thinking about there could be other things that are called birding kit. Okay, we're going to go ahead and equip that, and then save off those. In fact, the birding log will let you go ahead and drag in your items into the weapon and second slot, so that if you want to re-equip them just from this window, you can just right-click them like that, re-equip your birding kit. Oh, gotta drag it there first. Re-equip your birding kit, and it all works about how you would expect. Okay, we've got a birding kit equipped. I'm going to go ahead and put it in slot number 1, which is what I have hard-coded as my birding number. So, just a moment. Hello, little one. Are you going to come meow at me? Okay, so Real Tough did mention a thing. So when I search on LOTRO interface for fishing, there are 3 things that come up: fishing log, fishing helper, and gone fishing. Fishing log is what this plugin was cloned off of by Vinny. So that's what I used as a starting point. I didn't really think about that there were some other ones. This is the fishing helper. Looks like it was done by Homeopathics, which is seems to be a French developer, and they are quite prolific. Nice. So they show your current fishing skill, which is actually a thing that I want to do with birding. I want to show that skill. Cool. They show you locations of master NPCs, locations of fishing quests. Very nice. And I think these are trophies. They call them wall fishes. Okay. Awesome. Lots of cool stuff there. Gone fishing is just a place where you can do saving off of your items and the skill itself. So that looks very much a part of what the fishing log and now the birding log window have as well. Okay, cool. Real time, I'm not sure which one of those you were talking about, or possibly something else. Let me know which one was on your mind. In the meantime, birding. So what we observed from testing during last stream is that a birding event seems to be a 30-second event whereupon you can spot birds with the white feather event happening one time each in the first, second, and third sets of 10 seconds. So from 0 to 10 seconds, from 10 to 20, from 20 to 30. After that, it doesn't seem to happen 100%, but usually the birding skill goes into a 3-second cooldown, and then you can do it all over again. Let's see that in action, and let's see the timer that I've got in place to give us a visual on that. So we go ahead and start our birding call, and we're expecting a white feather event in the first 10 seconds here. There it is. And then we're expecting one in the next 10 seconds, and the bar will turn green once you've done your white feather event for that 10 seconds. Awesome. The third set of 10 seconds here. All right. So we are done. That was 3 out of 3. That was all of them. Let's go take a look at our... Oh, I forgot to set my zone. Did I find a bird? I've acquired a silver stork. Awesome. Now, the birding skill ended early there, which is interesting. Usually it lasts for the full 30 seconds. I don't know what was the cause of that. But I am paying attention to the "you have acquired silver stork" message. Let's go ahead and... Is there a loot self? Yeah, let's pay attention to that. And we're going to do this one more time just for the testing of it. The more I do this, the more I pay attention to the UI, the more misunderstandings of how it works I can spot. So I never mind doing this. And also, the whole point of this was to aid me in my birding attempts. Okay, so we've already gotten 2 of them. And there's the last one. Okay, that one lasted the whole time. You've acquired a Mithythal dabchick. That was a new type of bird. Awesome. What am I actually looking for? Hang on a second. If we come over to hobbies, to birding, we are in Swanfleet. All the birds of Swanfleet. I'm looking for just the rarest bird of Swanfleet. Fantastic. So that one may be a while. Okay, Real Tough, it confirms it was the one from homeopathy? No. Homeopathics. I don't know what that means in French. Okay. Maybe it's homeopathics. Cool. So yes, I definitely have some inspiration. It probably won't be quite like this, but I have some ideas. So this was the timer. This was the number one thing I was interested in developing, was the visual representation of how far into the 30 seconds you are. Have you gotten your white feather event for this section of time? And if so, you can just kind of chill out for the rest of that 10-second period. And just give you a sense of a better sense of what's going on, because I found myself after birding for an hour that these 3 phases for any particular birding were very much blurring together. Unfortunately, the plugin has no insight into the white feather events, anything like that. We can't know if you were successful. We can't know when it's happening. All we can tell you is it should be happening in these spaces, and it's all on you. So what happens if you miss a white feather event, or if you rebird when there was not a white feather event? So when a white feather event happens, you have about 2 seconds to spot the bird during that white feather event. If you miss it, either you do nothing. Well, if you do nothing, then that's fine. That was the white feather event for that 10 seconds. In fact, let's confirm that now by hands off. We're not going to white feather for the first 10 seconds. So we can see after 2 seconds, we go, we put our telescope down. Oh, there's the other one. We raise the telescope. We had the 2 seconds to get it. Awesome. And so for the final third here, there we go. So missing one, just, oops, we didn't hit the key in time, by itself doesn't seem to be a problem. It probably reduces the final quality of what you're going to be seeing, but other than that, doesn't seem to be a problem. Getting it wrong seems to squash any white feather events for 10 seconds, which automatically puts you into the next 10-second zone, which effectively means that you will not get at least one of your white feathers. So let's go ahead and do a false spotting in the second set here. So we get our white feather in the first one, and then we're in the second one, so I'm going to go ahead and do an incorrect one. The plugin doesn't know it was wrong. The plugin is optimistic and it thinks we got it, but we can see we didn't get a white feather event to replace it. It just squelched the white feather event in, oops. Accidentally pressed the wrong key there. Awesome. So we got 2 out of the 3. We got another goosander. We can see from the color that that's a common bird. So to get those better birds, we really want to get all 3 of those white feather events. So you do have only 2 seconds to jump on it when it happens. And we can see it can happen at the very tail end of that 10-second period. But because you know it has to happen in that 10-second period, you can basically say, okay, it's coming, there it is. Now, from a plugin's perspective, we know when you press the key, but we don't know when you saw the white feather event to which you are responding, which is a bit of a problem. So internally, I just sort of subtract half a second, because I'm assuming anyone who cares enough to use this plugin is also paying attention. And if not, it'll just count for the wrong section of time, and you'll probably get a sense that that happened. Okay, so that's a review of what we got so far. There's actually a few more changes, so let's go ahead and nip on over to the code side of things and see what I've done under the covers. So we started with the design document last time. We were all here for that. Then you were like my top 13 plus things that I was interested in doing with this plugin. There were some problems that I discovered when I was trying to use Visual Studio Code plus the Lua extension, plus the LOTRO API extension, which inherently uses the Lua extension. And one of them was it was failing to parse variables that were 2 capital letters underscore something else. And it was just seeing this as 2 tokens, BL underscore and window. And that it was just not having a good time with that. So that's a pattern that Vinny uses in his plugins. So I just went ahead and said, we'll deal with that later, but for right now, for development, I do not want to have error messages on what is otherwise correct code. So we'll go ahead and rename BL window to birding log window. And in this case, it wasn't the class, it was the name of an instance of that class. So I added instance on it for clarity. Since it's a global variable, it has that capital B on it. So this was just those changes. So if you're using Visual Studio Code, and if you're using the Lua extension with Visual Studio Code, and probably the Turbine API as well, be aware that that may be a thing that you'll encounter with the current version of those extensions. I don't know if the fault lies in the Lua extension parsing or maybe something that Lunar Water's LOTRO API parsing is doing. One of those is mistakenly parsing these. And until that gets changed somewhere up the pipeline, it's kind of just easier to rename the variables. I was not that stuck on this variable scheme. So, okay, so a couple of things that I realized I really needed to have for development is if the window's open when I unload it, let's go ahead and do that. Unload, reload, I want the window to still be there. And if I move the window around, I want it to remember the location. And that's not just for development. That's just a very nice to have. If you're making a window for a user, if they move the window, you want it to come back where you moved it to. So that was some development nice to haves. And I started with that because it was driving me bonkers to have to reopen the window and remove the window every time I was unloading and reloading, which if you're developing a plugin, that happens a lot. So very first thing I did was go ahead and do a couple of things about that. Okay, what did that look like? It was changing 2 files, the main file and the window file. The main file there were two versions of a .open function being assigned for a plugin, and I don't know why that was there. It doesn't seem to do anything. Maybe once upon a time this was a useful thing to have in a LOTRO plugin. It does not seem to be useful at the moment, and there were also two of them identical, and so that was throwing its own little parser error. RealTef said, can you make an icon to open it? That is absolutely a thing I have an interest in, but that's an excellent point. I don't know if that made it into the to-do file. 14. Add icon to open window. Great point. Thank you, RealTef. These were two instances of a function that don't seem to do anything, and also they were duplicated. So I went ahead and deleted them. At the same time, I went ahead and added a helper function to BL window, which is show hide. And this is the function you want to call whenever the window is visibility is changed, because it's going to go ahead and change the visibility of the window and save that new setting into your character settings, so that when the character settings get written out to a file, it's just automatically there. So we can see that in a couple places. We can see this call to set visible gets changed to show hide. We can see this call gets changed to show hide. We can see anything else there? That's all position stuff. Oh, this call to set visible was always false. It always started not visible, and we want to change that to whatever it was when we unloaded the plugin. Okay, and the rest of it's position, so we'll come back to that. We also want to go ahead and make sure we have some default settings. And Caligon says, I love your background. I think you mean hopefully the one in real life, in which case, yep, there's a bunch of board games over there and a cat sleeping on the couch over there. So, and some chainmail on the table. So all sorts of fun stuff in the background today. Let's see. Yes, and a friend brought over some origami stars. They're probably too small to actually see in the camera, but like 100 different little origami stars acting as like a flower in a basket. It's very cool up in front and very fun to like put your hand on. But it probably just looks like flowers over there. So, okay. So we made a helper function to init a setting because we wanted to go ahead and do the same basic things over and over. If it's not already there, go ahead and initialize it with a default setting. And we go ahead and save off some settings for the window. And we have a default visible of false that matches the current behavior. And again, this is only setting it if that thing isn't already there. If there's a setting there, we don't touch it. This is default settings only. And then for X and Y, we just do whatever the code was doing for that initial position of the window. And then coming back into the window, that's what was going on here. We just moved that to a single time initialization of the setting. And then from then on, we're setting the position according to the X and Y values in the settings. So that's pretty much it. And then, yes, we have a position change handler for the window, which just gets the XY of the position, or canonically probably left top. And then we go ahead and save those off in the character settings. So use them when you load the window, update them when the window moves. Super simple. The visibility is slightly more complicated because you have to make sure all those places that we're directly calling set visible are now using your intermediary function, so that you don't have to have them all remember to update the settings all over the place. So, awesome. That's the changes that it took to make us remember the visibility of the window and the position of the window. They're pretty straightforward changes to make once you're used to what's going on, and if you already have a fully functioning settings system, which we more or less did. We didn't have that initialization to a default value idea going on, and there's a couple of different ways to do that. A lot of times you'll see plugins that have kind of the default structure, and then they will merge a file onto that. So any missing entries are just taken over by the default, and anything that's there overrides the default. I thought that might be a little complicated for what was already there, so I just went with, okay, we'll just initialize a couple of new things, because I don't think we're going to go too overboard with settings in the near future. We'll see. All right, moved initialization of player and pname. Yeah, this was just a simple thing. There were a couple of globals being saved off, the player for the local player, pname for that player's name. And I wanted to use them I wanted to use them somewhere else, before one of the import statements. And let's see, where were they? They were here. Oh yes, they were after the import of the birding window, and I wanted to use them in something that the birding window was importing. So we just moved them up to the top. There didn't feel like there was a good reason to delay initializing those. Okay, this is just a bug that's probably there in the phishing one as well, which is to say if you get the advancement text, your birding has advanced to whatever. In fact, we should go ahead and have advancement on in this tab. My proficiency did increase to 129. Unfortunately, that's in a different window. When you see the message, your proficiency in birding has increased to X, where X is some number greater than 0. This is the thing that is looking for that, but it was accepting it from any chat channel. So if someone had said that basic format into world chat, the plugin would accept that as a valid way to identify your birding, or your phishing probably for the phishing log. So that was just a thing to fix, is if we know which chat channel it's going to be in, only accept it from that chat channel. It saves people from spoofing whatever. Not that there's much downside to your plugin thinking you have the wrong birding skill. It's just a little disappointing if the numbers don't match. So that was just a little bug fix. And then the actual timer control. Now this is a couple different things. We can see a couple things. In main, there's a handler in your self loop. You have acquired a bird. If that happens, by default, we are done with the birding skill. So we just want to stop the birding timer. And that's what this is. This is saying we found a bird. That passes off to the window. The window has a couple of things. We're going to be importing a new timer control. We're going to make space for that timer. We're going to go ahead and initialize that timer. And for now, we have hard-coded the action key that dictates that we're doing a birding activity, which is to say the number 1 on my quick bar, my default quick bar, without Control, Alt, or Shift being held down. And then we pass on through. If a bird is found, we pass that to the timer so it can handle that. And the rest of this is all in the timer class. Timer control is more complicated than any of the other timers I've done for a UI timer, because I wanted to be able to color each of those sections differently. If you're birding and you get a white feather event, I want to be able to color just that section green because you still have a couple more sections to do. And by default, the way you do a timer like this is you change the background color of a control and you change the size of a control. And in this case, you also change the left position of that control because we're sliding the timer to the right instead of to the left. Which I think works in my head, but it was more work maybe than it was worth. So maybe sliding everything to the left instead of the right would have been better. So the desire to be able to color each of those separately meant it couldn't be a single control based off of the just set the background color. It had to be 4 different controls, one for each of those 4 sections. The first 10, the second 10, the third 10, and the final 3-second cooldown, which sometimes happens, but not always, which is a little frustrating. Okay. And so, in order to color those separately, they have to be... it is easiest if they are separate controls. It might be possible in some way to make a control be multiple colors, but I can't think of one, especially one that I'm also changing the size of like that. All right, still not the rarest bird. We'll work on it. Okay, so, all right, it's a new file, so we're just going to look at it in here. So the timer control is a couple of things, and it does more. Timer control is a bit of an oversimplification. It is specifically a birding timer control that's doing things like paying attention to, are you equipping or unequipping items? That could be done higher up, but for right now, it's being done right here. So we pay attention to if you equip something or unequip something. If you unequip, and we're only paying attention to your primary weapon slot, which is where your birding kit goes. So if you unequip something, by default, you are not in a birding state. If you equip something to your primary weapon slot that has birding kit in the name, then we assume that you are capable of doing birding right now. What else is interesting in here? So we have stopwatch controls, and we initialize 4 of them. 3 of them with a background color of green, 1 of them with a background color of red. And that's the 30 seconds plus that 3-second cooldown. We also have timelines. These are these lines that just separate out the 3 things, the 3 10-second divisions. That one was basically at the 10-second mark. And it makes me wonder if I should shift it slightly, if there's maybe a second at the beginning that doesn't really count. But everything else lines up really well. So I think sometimes it just happens at the 10-second. The first 10 seconds is actually complicated because they know that you have what feels like a multi-second cooldown on your birding skill when you first activate it. 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005. So the first 5 seconds of the first 10 seconds can't really be used for a white feather event. And they know that. So the first event is really going to be after 5 seconds in. So you basically have a 5 seconds, a 10 second, and another 10 second chunk. And part of me wanted to go ahead and just put a red bar on the first half as well. And maybe that's worth doing. I don't know. But it was already complicated enough. So I guess I'll put that in the to-do item. 15. Color the first 5 seconds of the timer differently because it is a mandatory skill cooldown, question mark? Alright, that's a problem for later. Okay, so that's what the timelines are here, is the lines that are on the timer. Timer lines might have been a less confusing name, I don't know. And then just a text box that we can show the amount of time left, actually the amount of time that we have been going on the bar. So that's this one right here. I thought 1 second increments was a little rough, so I went with tenth of a second increments, and that felt a little bit more manageable. Tenths of seconds goes fast enough that it doesn't feel like it's a slog, but still, you can actually make out the individual numbers if you're looking at it. Hundredths doesn't make a lot of sense. Come on. Nope. Oh, and I keep forgetting to set my zone. Oh, that's a development thing that I want to do in the near future. Okay. And I think it's already in the to-do. So, timer control. We have the timer text. We say we want to know about key down events, and here's where we figure out if it's something we want to pay attention to. Is we are initialized, or we are set with the activation key. And eventually this is going to be in the options. I think right now there are no options. There's an option. There's an auto open window option. That's cool. Well, real tough, if you are using the birding log, maybe check that auto open window box. It might make you happy until such time as there's an icon to open it. But we have options. What I want to do is add an option that says, click in here and then type the thing, or I don't know, press this button, and then the next thing you press will be the thing that you are going to be activating with. Something like that. I don't know if there's an easy way to correlate that. I'm hoping there's an enum that we can use for that, to maybe present to the user what we think it is. But that could also be done with a lookup table. Anyway, so key down, if it's the key we're looking for, and if birding item is equipped, then we go ahead and process it. And our update function is figuring out which of the timer sections should be incrementing, and then doing that. We have a get current timer control based off of how long we are into the time, and based off of that we figure out how much of it should be displayed, and However much it has shrunk by, we also need to move it over by as well, so it appears to be shrinking from the left. Cool. How do we figure out if the birding equipment is equipped? Actually, that's a good question. Are we still using this function? We are. Okay, we are using it in two places. So if something is equipped, we go ahead and update is birding equipped. Yeah, is birding equipped. It just gets your primary weapon. It could be nil, so watch out for that. But if it is nil, we'll just bail out. We don't have a birding item equipped if it's nil. If it's not nil, right now this plugin is very much not localized. But what we're looking for is something. In this case, it's birding kit. If birding kit is in the name, we're going to assume that it's a birding kit, or that you're able to do the birding action. Until proven otherwise, maybe that needs to be more complicated. But that means if someday there's an advanced birding kit or a Lebathron birding kit or whatever, it just automatically works. Cool. If an item is equipped, we go ahead and update our is birding equipped. If something's unequipped, as we said, by default, you don't have a birding kit equipped if you've unequipped your primary weapon, so we just set it to false. We have some helper functions for creating a timer section, setting the action key, figuring out where the left of each of these timer controls is, stuff like that. It's non-trivial to be able to support resizing of the window when you have all these little things in there. But by writing it from the beginning to support resizing of width, it makes it a lot easier to come back in and make this window resizable and have the timer do something sensible. All this window then needs to do is pass on to the control hose of the timer, hey, your size has changed, and we can take advantage of the logic that is already there instead of hard coding widths in. If you hard code everything in, it's a lot harder to overcome that momentum to make the window resizable. So if you're ever going to make it resizable, think about planning it in from the beginning. Okay, what happens when the action key is received? Either the timer is not active, in which case we start the timer, or the timer is active, in which case we assume that we successfully saw the white bird feathers and completed that. Marking the section complete, in this case, is marking it green. Timer start kind of resets everything back to a good state. Background colors, the widths of those controls, because their actual width shrinks. And also their positions, their left position also moves more to the right to compensate. Marking section complete is... Oh, it's only a quarter of a second leeway that we give for the current timer control. I almost feel like that should be half a second, but maybe it's not a problem. And then control set background color to dark green. That makes sense. All right, stopping a timer just sets a variable. We check for that in the update loop. It's a little bit easier than trying to do anything more complicated. Stop the timer. Okay, is stopped, is false. Same thing if a bird is found. And then in the update function, if that is set, then we go ahead and turn off the wanting the updates and the visibility of this. And we'll pick it up as soon as it's started back up. We also check if it stopped in order to know whether we should start the timer. If it's not stopped, it is by definition started. That's a basic timer control. And when I say basic, I mean not basic at all. Usually a timer control will be a single piece of this. This is a meta timer control with 4 different pieces managing their states individually. So if you feel like this was unnecessarily complex, it might be, but it did require more complexity than a single timer would have been if you want the ability to color each of these sections separately from each of the other sections. If that's a requirement, I think this is about the simplest way that you can implement it. But I'm happy to be proven wrong on that. Okay, so that is that timer. What else did we do? Nothing. Oh, I added in a helper function. For debugging purposes, I use this dump function, which I borrowed from some extant plugin, possibly one by Galahad. And it's just super useful for just tossing a variable at it and pretty printing this. If it's just a variable, it's fine. If it's nil, it's fine. If it's a Boolean, it's fine. Excuse me. Got a little something in my throat. If it's a Boolean, it's fine. If it's nil, it's fine. If it's a table, it'll pretty print that and recurse in so that you can see the contents of that table. It's just so useful when you're trying to figure out, hey, what is the parameter of this function that I'm being, of this callback function? I don't know what it is. Let's just dump it out. When you're doing debugging, let's just see what's in this variable, because you think this should be a Boolean, and then you spit it out, and it's like, this is a table, and you're like, something has gone horribly wrong here. Let's fix that. And we go ahead and just add the file and add the import here. And so now we have it available whenever, and we don't have to have a unclean working directory with that just hanging around somewhere. Okay, so good idea from RealTough on the icon to include in the to-do file. So to-do file changes. We're going to go ahead and save those off, and that gives us a clean working directory. Let's go ahead and push those out. And now everyone's caught up. They've had a chance to see what I was doing over the weekend, or whenever it was. And this was one of the big things, is visualizing things in the game is a big part of how I understand them, how I internalize them. It's why... That was interesting. I did not see a white feather event, and I clicked without letting it come, which I shouldn't do. I should just let these things play out instead of just assuming, oh no, I missed it. Because like I said, I could misunderstand where these gaps are. I feel very strongly, after having done this dozens of times, that there are specific gaps. Like the white feather events definitely can show up in specific times, and that gives you your 3 possibilities. But they might not be actually 10 seconds. Because your first 5 seconds are consumed, it's possible that they're slightly different. Instead of 10, 10, 10, it might be 12, 8, 10, for instance, or something, 12, 9, 9. Hello, person. They're level 7. Awesome. I will cheer them. So let's get that white feather event. That's why I needed to that's why I wanted to get this timer as soon as possible, because I still have a bunch of deeds to complete. And the more I'm staring at this, kind of verifying that it matches the reality of the game, the more I can convince myself that I've mapped the rules correctly. I did the same thing when I was developing the minstrel buff out of combat timer, is I made some guesses based off of what I was seeing, and I implemented timers, and then I saw how well did they match to the in-game effect. And when the timer would do something different, like the in-game timer, like I'd suddenly be out of combat when I wasn't expecting it, I'd have to go back and think, what did I just do in that combat? How do I replicate it? And okay, so it was this skill, and this skill doesn't work the way I was thinking. Okay, this skill is different. And then recode that into the plugin. So eventually, all the combats I was doing with Minstrel, the out of combat timer, the 9-second out of combat timer is what they describe it. Those rules were finally incorporated, and what I was seeing in the plugin was matching the gameplay. And that's when I figured I understood pretty well how things worked. And maybe if I was off by 1/10 of a second here or a slight thing there, that didn't matter so much. With the overall stuff was matching. And here we can see pretty consistently there's 3 different white feather events, but only 1 in each of these gaps. Maybe the positions of those time lines, the vertical white lines, are off slightly, but the general idea seems very correct. I've never seen 2 of these white feather events happening in a single one of those 10-second gaps so far. And I look forward to either gathering more evidence that supports my theory that I'm right, or finding something contrary that shows that maybe that first one's just off a little bit. Evo in chat seems to be saying hello, welcome. We are looking at birding in Lord of the Rings Online and how we can make plugins that help us with birding. Now, one thing I haven't done is tried to make this kind of pretty, maybe a background color or something, a border around the timer area, and that's maybe something that will come later. But for now, yeah, it definitely is kind of a plain-looking thing. That's a known feature / bug. Okay. Um, Okay, what are we calling this in zone? Let me search for zone. When I'm loading save the zone, if plugin is loaded, I want that very much to be the next thing that I work on. I'm actually going to upgrade this to priority 0. This is what we're going to be working on today's stream until it's done, and then we'll see what else is there. Oh, but we can go ahead and mark off the timer as complete. Good job. Determine the maximum time for birding. So we observed that birding always takes 30 seconds unless the player moves or otherwise cancels the birding. I actually have observed it once or twice take less time than that, but the plugin takes that into account. If you catch a bird, we do cancel the timing event. Observation, when birding is over, skill goes into cooldown, which is about 5 seconds. It's actually 3 seconds, and I have seen it not do it, but in general it does do it. I'm uncertain. It's possible it only goes into the cooldown if you catch a bird, and so if you don't catch a bird, it doesn't do it. That could be something for later. 16. Possible timer improvements. In the final 3 seconds might not happen if you don't catch a bird, question mark. Test this. Okay. Each of the 3 white feather events happens in 10-second increment sections, and we've been pretty confident about that. Character gives up on white feather event after approximately 3 seconds. I think it's actually about 2 seconds. But the plugin has no way to know that that's happening at all, other than by you pressing the key. So that's just nice to know, I guess. Hypothesis, incorrectly birding does not change the number of successes. That was false. It seems to, and it also seems to squelch any possibility of a white feather event in that section. And that could actually be a way to kind of hone into where these sections are. If we think that perhaps the first section isn't 0 to 10, but maybe 0 to 11, then if we do a false observation at 10.1, 10.2, we could try to figure out which one did that squelch, the first one or the second one. Try misbirding at 10.1, 10.2, 10.3 seconds as a way of testing if 0 to 10 is the correct boundary. Okay. Okay, so all of that is great, and we're going to go ahead and delete it because the timer is working. Make an on-screen timer with the expected maximum time for birding. If testing shows a minimum amount of time between white feathers appearing, visually represent that somehow. The answer is unclear. I have had a white feather event that happened so close to the previous one that because I was a little delayed in activating that one, my skill was actually still cooling down into the start of that 2-second period. So one thing we could do is that if you press your birding skill, we could draw something on here that shows that the birding skill is in cooldown. Just another one of these red sections. We could just plop that on there with a width for 5 seconds. Okay, that one was into the next zone, but it was on the edge. I feel like if we go ahead and change that 0.025 to 0.5, that will give us a little bit better. Okay. Yeah, so it would be possible to drop a 5-second cooldown. I think it's 5 seconds. Let's take a look at that. 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005. Roughly 5 seconds. I'd want to double check that. 1004. somewhere around 4 to 5 seconds. That deserves some timing. So that is a thought, is just drag it around, put it wherever the current one is, and it'll be on top of the timer. So the timer keeps on going underneath it, and then just hide it after a certain amount of time. That's definitely a possibility, and one I think we'll add to here. Whenever we bird or rebird, place 5 question second block on top of the actual timer that also shrinks color coded to show that we're on cooldown. Same red question mark. Okay, so that's the thing for later. Awesome. Make an on-screen timer. If testing shows a minimum, visually represent that somehow. Awesome. Add a cancel icon somewhere. Oh yeah, we're gonna go ahead and steal that as well. Add some way to cancel the birding timer in case the player moves or something. Yeah, I'm thinking just a little X in like the top right corner here. Just a little version of the X button that closes windows. That would just represent okay, we're definitely into 10 seconds there. It's super interesting. So do we think it's the first 11 seconds? And if so, where is that time taken from? Because the 30 seconds is definitely very consistent. Or is it? Is it possible that's 31 seconds? Let's take another look at the animation at the very end. "30 seconds seems pretty consistent." I want to bring that down actually. Don't even need to get the telescope out. We're that fast on seeing the bird. I could believe that there's a half second extra in there instead of like 30 seconds at 30 and a half. And I could believe that extra half second could be counted towards the first section without meaningfully changing anything else. Let's see this one more time in action. Like I said, this is one reason I really wanted to get this visual timer in as soon as possible, because it lets us check all of our assumptions. 8, 9, 30. It's not long, but it definitely feels like it is slightly beyond where we start. Josh in chat says, "Hi, I'm new to this game. Which is most fun class to play, mostly solo?" What a great question. So first of all, Lord of the Rings Online, while it is an MMO, is very playable as a solo character, pretty much regardless of any class. You're going to be able to do most of the stuff most of the time. In the game, there are trait trees that allow you to differentiate your character in various ways. And so, for instance, I am playing a minstrel, and we can see from the predominant red spending of all my trait points, I am playing a redline minstrel or a warrior skald minstrel. which is a minstrel focusing on doing damage. A Watcher of Resolve, a blue line minstrel, is focusing on healing, and these are things that you can redo pretty much whenever you want, not in combat, but pretty much for a small in-game amount of money. And if you are a subscriber of the game, you have access to 2 of these. And there's a delay. You can't switch back and forth too rapidly, but after 30 or 45 seconds, you can switch back to another one. Oh, you say just like respecting in WoW? Yes, probably. It's been a long time since I played World of Warcraft, but yes, you can set up multiple specs. If you're a subscriber, I think you get 2 of these by default. You can unlock a 3rd one. I've never felt the need to do that, because in general, I only have like the primary thing my class does, Minstrel, is healing, and then the survive solo mode, which for Minstrel is damage. Some classes have all 3 of these as full different trait trees that you can do. Some of them have 2 of them, kind of your primary and your maybe a guardian might have their tanking and then their DPS, and then the yellow line is going to be optional things that you can buy into to enhance either one of those other 2, and some of them will have a full 3rd spec. And so I find it very convenient just to have one for doing DPS and one for doing heals. And if I'm doing the heals one, it is a slog to defeat anything on my own, but hopefully I'm partnered with people who can do the job. Perfect. Yes, you've got it, Josh. I'm definitely in Redline. When I'm solo, and sometimes when I'm with a group, depending on what we're doing as a group, sometimes it's just nice to have the extra damage. But we have that option. So just to show you, if I want to switch over here, I click that. It reassigns all my stuff. Takes maybe 5 seconds for it to think about all the things, and we can see a lockout here where we have to wait maybe about 30 seconds before we can flip back. So rarely is that a problem, but just be aware of it. There's also a thing, if you play the game, called Epic Battles, and in Epic Battles you also have some traits for how you are spec'd for your epic battles. And these frustratingly share a cooldown. So just something to be aware of. If you're doing epic battles, you will want to time those out. So I'll definitely have some epic battles where I want to be able to heal to support the troops that I'm fighting with, and some where I want to do damage because I want to be engaging with the mechanics of that epic battle, which is all about doing damage. And if I also want to be changing which spec I'm in, possibly Vanguard or Engineer are my 2 favorite things to do, but sometimes I really need to be Officer for a moment, and those cooldowns are shared, so I just have to be aware of that. It's manageable. So yes, the game is very soloable precisely because you have these specs. So you can be spec'd out in a way that really enhances your solo play, but also either respec if you're free to play and you don't have that second one, you don't want to spend the LOTRO points on it, it's totally fine. I'll just take a screenshot of it if I need to. So I'll just come in here with the snipping tool from Windows. I'll go ahead and do a little snip here. It's like, cool, this is what I'm going to restore to after I do the other thing, right? So you don't need a second one. It's a convenience thing. It saves you the time of re-clicking the buttons. But yeah, so I have one that's my solo spec and one for my group content spec. If I'm playing a Guardian, which is a tank class, one of them will be a damage, one of them will be a tanking. If I'm playing a DPS class, one of them is going to be DPS when I'm soloing, one of them is going to be, so for instance, Hunter. Hunter is a classic solo class. You have DPS where you're more mobile, you can move around while you're shooting. You have focusing on traps or other things, and you have hunter builds that are just all about doing as much damage and critting as possible, but you have to stand in one place to do it. Anyway, hunters are a classic thing to try out in Lord of the Rings Online, because in addition to being great at doing damage at the things that they are fighting, they also are great with travel skills. Just like in World of Warcraft, there are ways to travel rapidly between places. There's no griffins flying you between places, but there are stable masters that can move you from place to place. And some classes also have other things. Everyone can unlock some travel skills on their characters. We all start with a milestone, which you can bind to different milestone places throughout the game, and then you can use that. By default, it has a 1-hour cooldown, but you can reduce that through the in-game currency LOTRO points. You can spend that to reduce the cooldown on your milestone skills. LOTRO points can be earned by completing deeds in game, or you can also buy them with money. So milestones are great, but you can also get reputation-based travel skills. So I have helped the people of the Lone Lands so much, I now have a return to Osgurth that I can use to travel there, and that has an independent cooldown from my milestone. Josh says, kind words, so I can go whichever class I want. They all have damage spec. I think that is true. I haven't played every class, but I think they are all viable for solo play to get you a sense of how the game plays. Let's see. LOTRO Wiki. Class. Sweet. There are some restrictions for... Oh, that's funny. Hang on a second. Perfect. There are some restrictions, I think, still for which races can play which classes, but fewer restrictions than they once were. They've been opening that up. And just glancing at it, every one of these classes has either a DPS melee or DPS AoE entry here. And you can see which ones are kind of primary DPS and which ones are secondary DPS according to whoever wrote this table. Oh, awesome, Agartha. Agartha says free-to-play players also have access to 2 trait specs. I can never keep track of how many freebies have been granted to free-to-play players, so thank you for pointing that out. 7 says, is Two-Headed Guardian any good? I have a Guardian as my secondary character over here on the Treebeard server, and I find a Two-Headed Guardian can can defeat the landscape enemies that I'm trying to defeat pretty handily, and I feel like I have a lot of survivability while I do it. So I still have a lot of the heartiness of a tank in heavy armor, but I have the aggressive chopping of someone who is using a two-handed weapon. Josh says, which server has most activity? At the moment, the servers are divided into standard servers and legendary servers. Anyone can play on a standard server. You have to be a subscriber to play on the legendary servers. And right now, the Mordor server of the legendary servers is getting a lot of attention because it is both new and it has the new Veil of the Nine mechanic in which players are forced to more actively engage with both wraiths and ring wraiths. Wraiths can spawn periodically and be quite the challenge to fight solo. The ring wraiths are a special thing. They don't spawn every day, but they do spawn, and when they do, it's a kind of a server-wide thing. If you're not playing on a legendary server, then there are several of the more popular servers that I know are servers like Evernight and Laurelin, but I couldn't give you specifics on those. Maybe someone in chat has more recent numbers. Treebeard is a slow progression legendary server, so new areas of the world are unlocked every 6 months, give or take. And currently we have unlocked through Gondor, Western Gondor, Central, Eastern Gondor, South Ithilien, Osgiliath, and Minas Tirith Besieged. And in December we'll unlock Old Anorian, North Ithilien, and the Wastes, and possibly some other minor stuff as well. So, yeah, Treebeard is definitely a server for people who don't want necessarily access to everything all at once, but want to have access to it periodically. But Treebeard started a few years ago, so it's well into the storyline at this point. And Mordor and Angmar servers are probably going to progress a little bit faster than Treebeard, but they're starting at the Shadows of Angmar level 1 to 50 content right now. So for people who want that fresh experience of, I can actually get to the cap level of the server in a meaningful amount of time, in a limited amount of time, those servers are very excited about them. Pontin says, more damage to the two-headed Guardian. For me, I just prefer shield and sword always. I get it. And there are some Guardian skills, I think even in Redline, that might still react to a block where you might be giving that up if you're going two-headed. I don't play Guardian enough to really know about that. Garth says, a Nazgul spawned on Angmar. I think you summoned it. I I claim no responsibility for the Nazgul or whatever whoever it kills. Uh, Lori says, I love my two-headed guardian hobbit lass. She looks ridiculous with that huge sword, but I love her to death. Uh, yeah, I get that. My guardian is also a hobbit, and it's fun to have, especially if you get like a cosmetic like Thrang's sword, and you're just walking around with a sword that's twice as long as you. It's fun. It's great. Okay, so that's hopefully that helps Josh give you some ideas. I don't think you can go wrong with any of these classes, but some of my favorites are Minstrel. Minstrel is Bestral, as far as I'm concerned. And the reason why is I love ranged DPS. I love just being able to go pew pew from wherever I want. I don't want to have to run up to hit something. And different classes have different ways of doing abilities. And a lot of classes will use what's called an induction. And you'll have the experience of this from World of Warcraft probably, where you have a little bar that has to fill up. And when it does, the thing goes off. Think like a fireball for a mage. And so that induction bar is not a thing for minstrel damage. Minstrel damages are all immediate effects, they just go off. The only things minstrels have to worry about for inductions are their healing effects, most of them. And that's just something I love. I love not having to worry about inductions. I love being able to run around in circles like chicken with Sans head, and Minstrel gives me that ability. There are other DPS ranged classes that can do something similar, but Minstrel's the one I fell in love with and the one I understand the best. When I go into any of the other classes, I just don't understand how they work for the most part. Hunter, though, is just a lot of fun. If you love shooting things and going pew-pew, Hunter is a great one. And it does have a way to not care about inductions so much, but it's stand your ground, do as much damage as possible. It does have inductions on like half the skills, and that for me personally is a little bit of a bummer. So that's why it doesn't eke out Minstrel as like my favorite ranged DPS class. Yeah, if you like going up and punching things, you might find the Brawler interesting, the Guardian, the Champion, the Captain. They're all a little bit different ways of playing melee classes. And good luck. Find what works for you. Free-to-play accounts can have, I think, multiple characters on them, so you can just create a couple different characters, see which one feels good that you like. There's no harm in deleting a character to make room. Like if you filled up your character slot, I find it very emotionally challenging to delete a character, but there's no harm in it. Lots of people will make a character and play it for a while and then just delete the character, and boggles my mind, but it works for them. Cool. Well, thanks for the question. Let me know if you have any other questions. We'll be here looking at plugins. Okay. Okay. Josh says, cool, yeah, I can create 2 per server, but Brawler and Mariner I can't play because I'm still free to play. That's a good point. Those are newer classes, and they even have little asterisks on here. So the people at Standing Stone Games, who are the ones who put out Lord of the Rings Online, have been very generous with how much content and aspects of the game is available to people who are free to play. But there's a year or two lag generally between when something comes out and when it starts to trickle into free to play. And Brawler and Mariner are both just so recent that they're not available as options, and I should have thought about that. Awesome. Well, thanks very much for joining us. Let me know if you have any more questions. Pundit says, Minstrel is great. It's my second main at 150. I really only just made one to try out the class, but then just fell in love with it and kept it over 10 years later. I know what you mean. I switched to other classes, and I enjoy playing them, but I just love my little screaming hobbit so much. It's hard to give it up. And not everything the Minstrel does is screams, but enough of them are, you know? Oops. I agree, little hobbit. I agree. Okay. Also, it looks like this rock was adjusted after development because I am hovering. Fantastic. Okay. Let's go back in. So, what a great idea. I wonder if you can bird while you're in combat. Let's find out. I wonder if there's a way for me to get in combat without immediately defeating the thing here in Glen Hillock. One of the things I was doing was making sure you had the birding kit equipped. But one of the ideas I thought was to see if combat matters. And I think in general, you're probably not going to bird successfully if something is biting you, but I don't know for sure that there's a problem with it. So we're going to ride on down to somewhere with something and see if we can't test that. Hey, hello, Veilwolf. Okay, so easiest way for a minstrel to get into combat with something is to set the Echoes of Battle on it, which is a damage over time. Oh, thank you. A damage over time ability, but it tends not to hit right away. So if you activate it and then unactivate it, and then also unactivate your auto attack. Okay, you cannot bird in combat. Awesome. Probably just as well. So what we want to do is, oh no, now I have level 5 stuff in my inventory. What we want to do is go ahead and add that as a definite thing. So, to add out of combat to requirement to activate birding skill. Perfect. But the thing that I really want to work on, besides answering questions, which is totally fine, is setting the zone automatically. If I unload this plugin and I load it back up, and this is primarily going to be a development thing, but if I unload it and reload it in like less than 10 seconds, I want to keep this zone. So what I want to do is go ahead and add these. Add the time that we are unloading the plugin to the settings at the time of unload, and add the zone to the settings whenever we detect it. And then when we load the plugin, look at that time that we unloaded, and if it's within a certain number of seconds, I'm going to be generous and say 10 seconds, maybe 15 seconds. Go ahead and keep that zone. And if it's not, I think I want to spit something out into chat because we want to know what zone you're in. So let's go ahead and or just broadcast that we need a zone. Okay, so say the time. Whenever the zone is changed, save the zone. So like a last known zone. Okay, so if the plugin is loaded within X seconds, accept that zone as true. Cool. Let's look at that. So the unloading is probably in main. Unload. Perfect. And we can go ahead and save something in character settings. Agatha says the Nazgul is down. Congratulations. Was it the Southern or was it the other one? He says, good evening, before and Little Redhead. Sorry for being late. No worries. Glad you got here. Forgot what day it is. Yeah, I think Little Redhead and I have both been a little bit lazy about posting on social medias like Blue Sky and Twitter that we are streaming. So that's kind of on us. I got this says Grim Southern. That is the title that I am wearing right now, Dawn of the South. I participated in one of those on Mordor, but I'm glad it's account-wide because I don't want to wait for the Veil of the Nine on here. Okay, so what we want to do is probably initialize this, so we just know that there is a setting. I wonder what an options init is in this case. Okay, So we're going to come on up to here, and we're going to initialize the default settings. Awesome. So we're going to do an init settings, and this is going to be in character settings, and it is going to be unload time, and its default value is 0, the beginning of time. In fact, we might want to encourage it to be a floating value. Is it? This save file is very much not locale sensitive, or it's not paying attention to localization issues. So I'm going to set it like that and come back to that later. Okay, so unload. So we're going to character settings dot unload time, or we could quote it, equals, and then gain turbine dot engine get game time. Okay, so we are saving off the time. When unloading, save time. Auto accept zone. So that part is done. Whenever the zone is changed, save the zone. Okay. I'm not entirely sure how to do that, but we know it's happening here in the window. So let's go to set zone. That's the LOC button. We have a quick slot, and that's doing the LOC. And LOC, semicolon LOC, which is different than slash LOC, is doing that. And it's grabbing the XY coordinates off of that, which is very interesting. Okay, so it's going to be in the chat handler. Chat received. Probably in main. Chat dot received. There we go. We know this is the. In fact, we should probably. Let's see. Do we have? Yep. Your proficiency in birding has increased to 31. Handle your birding changing. Example. Cool. And you can currently spit that out just by typing /BL, and the plugin will go ahead and say your birding proficiency is whatever, and give you your highest title that you have available to you. Okay. And then self-loot, we can see that you have acquired, but we'll go ahead and give an example. Okay, that's there. When you get a bird, don't need that. Okay, that's all of this. Not sure what this is for. And then here is handle semicolon LOC. Oh, no. That's the handle /LOC. This one is handle semicolon LOC. So is that true? If I do AMR and I do /LOC, no. Why didn't that work? Oh, it only has the one pattern. I wonder if... I wonder if this is an old pattern. Okay, all three of these are being used. I want to go and check that. Where's my Lua patterns viewer? Okay, so we're going to be checking the three of these things. Oh, you know, that's actually not the one I wanted. Does this one do Lua? I wanted to say it did. I had one there where I was testing Lua. Where are we? Let's see. Okay, is this the one I was thinking of? Sorry, I apparently lost a link to it. Ah, that one no longer is active. Okay, well we can at least look at it and double check what's going on. So the message that we have is here. Oh, that's going to be hard to see. Okay, down below. You are on Treebeard server number at R something. Yep. Scroll that up. LX stuff, LY stuff, OX stuff, OY stuff, OZ stuff, and an H. Well, that would definitely do it. Of course, H is optional because that's your heading. Let me do an optional. You know what? I could just say I don't care about the rest of it. Let's pretend like we don't care about the rest of it. Let's come on up here and say dot star, dot star, dot star, just for kicks. Okay, that was not sufficient. I guess maybe it's not necessary because we're doing a match, so it should find it even though it's a subset, and then we don't need to worry about the game timestamp. That is interesting. I'm going to go ahead and space this out. That's interesting. what are we getting here? Turbine not shall not right line past / LOC question mark? Not in chat says, where can I see your plugins? Sure. Oops, that's not going to be the right one, is it? LOTRO interface. So if you go to lotrointerface.com and you are looking at a plugin, there is a link, list the author's interfaces. And so, for instance, if you wanted to see mine, you could go to list interfaces. Now, you ask any for UI. If you are talking about skins, I have not done any skins. But if you're talking about cosmetic UI changes, the one thing I think would apply is the opaque quest tracker. And that is just a opaque box that you can change the opacity and color of to plop underneath your quest area so that you can control that, and that's all it is. We can actually see it in action. I'm going to use the LOTRO Plugin Compendium. Thank you, Lunar Water, for making this. Find the opaque quest tracker, click Add. It is now installed. Awesome. Refresh with this little green arrow so LOTRO sees it, and then load the quest tracker. We can go ahead and place that underneath there. Why is that useful? I think it is useful. Oh, that's funny. Because otherwise this area can be a little tough to read against a contrasting pattern. So let's go ahead and, yeah, there we go. So some people whose eyes are maybe not super duper sharp might have trouble reading this text on top of a busy background. So drag this on over. When you're happy with this position and size, you can hit the little lock button. If you really want to modify it, you can come in, you can change the color. Maybe I really want the background to be red. Sure. Or green. Why not? Not sure if there's a reset button for the color. But the far upper left is basically black, so that's as reset as we get. You can also change the opacity if you want it all the way opaque. If you change your mind, or maybe you just want a little bit opaque, totally fine. And then if you want this lock button to be in a different place, that's easy enough to do. Switch it around. It'll show up wherever you ask, or not at all if it's distracting. Once this thing is locked, then you can't click on the background accidentally anymore. When it is unlocked, you are able to move it around by clicking and dragging. So get it to where you want, click the little lock button. If you really have it perfect, get rid of the little lock button, and then none of this interacts with your mouse in any way. Oh yeah, revert settings to default. Bam. Oh, that's funny. I'm not sure the lock changed. That could be a bug. Interesting. Okay. Well, not. I don't know if your kind word's justified, but it is a thing that you can do, and it says opaque quest tracker, but you can put this wherever you want. So if you would prefer to put it somewhere else on the screen, be my guest. Maybe it's for your radar. I don't know. At the moment, you can only make a single opaque box because it was intended for the quest area. But it would be possible to revamp this so that it supported multiple opaque boxes, I suppose. You could even make one that covers the whole screen. Let's see. Just like that. I don't know that I recommend it, but if you just want to play on dark mode, this would be a way to do it. And if you want to play on a really dark mode, that would also be a way to do it. Like, this is kind of challenge mode, right? But that's a way to make the game opaque or not if you want. You could actually key this into, I don't know if you have access to threat level, but if a plugin had access to threat level, you could actually opaque the screen when a wraith is nearby or something. Like, good luck, you just can't see it, or something. Cool. Seven says, I'm thinking about jumping into the game. Best to start on a normal server or go straight to the legendary server. I don't mind paying a sub. If you are... Hold on just a sec. If you are already familiar with MMOs like World of Warcraft or other ones that are out there, then I think you're going to be very comfortable with the mechanics of playing the game. If you're already comfortable in the world of Middle-earth from reading the books or seeing the movies, and you're thinking, that's a world I want to spend more time in, then I would, and you want all the conveniences that come with being a subscriber, I would recommend the 3-month subscription. It's a reasonable balance between a little bit more expensive and you're not locked in to having paid for a year when you're only interested in a month. So what we did, Little Redhead, who streamed before me, and what I did was we jumped on probably free to play for at least a couple of minutes, made a character, ran around a little bit, see, does this at all appeal to us? And then at some point they were like, okay, this appeals to us enough that we're willing to toss a little money at them to get the perks that come with that and to support the game. Cool, have a 3-month subscription. And then we done that a couple of times, and we're like, okay, we're enjoying it enough that we're not worried about feeling like we made a bad investment if we pay the annual subscription, which is much cheaper per month, almost half the price of doing a month-to-month subscription. So basically, if you play for anything close to 6 months out of the year, it was the same price as if you had just had a month-to-month subscription going the whole time. So if... yeah, that's what I recommend. There's no harm in doing free-to-play, except that you are limited to the standard servers. If you have any interest in a legendary server and the either the slow pace of Treebeard or the extra difficulty of Angmar and Mordor, yeah, I would encourage you to jump on in. 1 month or 3-month subscriptions are pretty affordable ways to try the game out and see if you like it. But you can try out on a standard server. You can just make a character, just hop on and make a whatever your favorite type of class is, DPS, tank, heal, whatever. Bjornings are great at doing a little bit of everything. You might just grab a Bjorning, hop on, play for a couple hours, see if you are enjoying the story, enjoying kind of the chance to interact with Aragorn and all the other characters that you might be familiar with from the story. Aragorn and Gandalf feature specifically early on for the human, hobbit, and Bjorning classes. You'll get to interact with them a little bit before they go off and do their thing and you go off and do your thing. So yeah, I guess that's what I recommend. Is there's no harm in just jumping on for a few hours on a standard server, see if you like it. You don't have to throw money at a subscription until you're actually like, oh yeah, I could see myself playing this for another 10 hours, no problem, or whatever. So I guess that would be the thing. If you are looking for a really more difficult way of playing, Angmar and Mordor are definitely going to offer that because they have both the Veil of the Nine mechanics, which can surprise you with a random wraith attacking you, even if you weren't ready for it. And they also have landscape difficulty available, so that if you want to step up the difficulty even further, you can make all the monsters you attack do more damage to you and take less damage from you. Not says, I'm thinking about playing in the legendary server. Awesome. So Angmar is hosted in the eastern United States. Mordor is hosted in Western Europe, I think in the Netherlands. And there's a lot of people in Europe who are very excited about having a server on their side of the ocean. So generally Mordor has been a very heavily populated server, all things compared. And Angmar has been also a steadily populated server, but not quite to the level of Mordor. Seven says, yeah, that Wraith mechanic sounds like a lot of fun. Good way to meet new people and try to survive together. Awesome, yeah. And the things that the Wraiths drop are compelling to a lot of people who are interested in exploring the Veil of the Nine mechanic. And so it's very easy to get higher level people to come to where you are for a guaranteed chance at those tattered shadows that the Wraiths drop. It's like, oh, there's a Wraith over by Adso's camp. As people want to come and get those tattered shadows. So even if there's a Wraith that is causing you problems, you're probably going to be able to find people to come clear it out. Even if they're not on level, if they're higher level, totally fine. They still want the reward that comes from being a part of defeating the Wraith. And then there's also, on top of the raids, there's the occasional appearances of the Nazgul, which is more of a server-wide fight. And they're working behind the scenes to make that flow more smoothly than it currently does, because there are technological challenges under the covers for having more than 50 or 100 people in the same location trying to attack a single monster. So they're working behind the scenes to make that better. But at the moment, people are still having a good time with it. So John says, the new servers are simply very good. As Germans, we play on Mordor and it's incredibly good. The game... John is finding the game is a bit too easy, or that balance of classes is off. So first of all, I am not an employee of SSG. I just am a fan of the game and a fan of plugins, so I'm here streaming. So I have no official capacity to answer you. But I would say, if you are finding the game easy and you want to earn extra goodies while you play, then I would encourage you go to a hardened traveler. Yeah, let's go to Thorin's Gate. I would encourage you to visit your local hardened traveler. They appear in all the starting areas and maybe a couple other places. There's a full list over on the wiki. And set your landscape difficulty to something higher than 0. 0 is the default. It's just your out of the box experience. But this is the hardened traveler, and they will let you set your difficulty to 0, which is normal, all the way up to 9, and every step up that you go means that monsters are going to take less damage from you, do more damage to you, and once you hit, I believe, difficulty 3, they will start adding explosion-like effects underneath you, where a box will appear and you only have a few seconds to move out of the way before it explodes and does a meaningful amount of damage to your morale. So I would definitely recommend, if you're at all finding the game is easier than you want the experience to be, go get difficulty 3 Fearless going and see how that feels. If that still feels easy, go up a few more. Go all the way to Heroic. There are benefits to doing this. You'll start getting tokens of heroism. In fact, I have some to turn in. So, tokens of heroism. Oh, I can't do it on this... well, I'm not going to do it on this character. I need to do that later. Okay, but when you turn in tokens of heroism, you are going to get reputation with the Path of Valor. This character is maxed out, so I want to do it on a different character on this server. You'll also get Hero's Marks, which you can use to barter with the Hardened Traveler. You can get things that will give you more Hero's Marks. You can also get a bunch of fun emotes that are extra versions of the standard emote. For instance, my new favorite thing is an improvement on the Hero Pose emote. So if we come over here, Hero Pose, the normal Hero Pose, you raise your sword in the air, and you just stay there. It's fine. So I raise my sword in the air, and I will stay in that position until I move. The Hero Pose Epic, same thing, except you are now a beacon in this time of darkness, which I find an amusing thing. I don't know if my group appreciates it, but sometimes I'm a little bit ahead of them, and I found the thing that we're looking for, and we'll just send up a beacon that hopefully makes it a little bit easier for them to find where I am on the landscape. But even if it doesn't, I just love the effect. So that's a fun thing that you can eventually barter for with the Hardened Traveler, with these tokens of heroism. Sorry, not the tokens of heroism, with the Hero's Marks. So that was the first thing I would say. If the game seems a little bit easy, use the landscape difficulty to make it as hard as you want, with some commensurate rewards. If you're really enjoying that, just be aware, if you are in instances of 3 people or more, or some questing instances, epic quests, for instance, oftentimes the landscape difficulty will be turned off. And that's very convenient, especially if you have like difficulty 7 and you're traveling with a group of 5 other people, and suddenly you are forced into a solo quest for questing purposes. You will probably not have the landscape difficulty in that, so it should be fine. But if you're going into missions, if you're going into single or 2-person instances that you choose through the Dungeon Finder, the Instance Finder, then you will still have that landscape difficulty. So take that into account. Doing epic battles, solo or duo, with landscape difficulty is just an extra level of, that's harder. If you think the balance of classes is off, that's a harder problem to solve, but I know SSG is constantly thinking about class balance, constantly making little tweaks and adjustments. I think it would be rare to find a recent patch notes that doesn't include some class balancing or tweaking. They're constantly thinking about this. But you'll find more information about that on the forums, and that's probably a better place to talk about your specific concerns. You say favorite classes are very strong. As a minstrel, I do not always feel very strong. Sometimes I feel quite squishy. Some Corsair will come and beat on me for a while, and my health feels pretty low. And then I'll see a different Corsair beating on Little Redhead, who's playing a hunter, and her health is not going down nearly so fast. So your mileage may vary. But again, class balance issues, developers do pay attention to some extent to the forum posts, and that's probably the best place to give feedback on your experience. Agatha says, when you set the landscape difficulty on a Veil of the 9 server, it also enables the spawning of wraiths in instances, even if solo. I've had a mournful middle tier wraith spawn when I was soloing a 3-person instance. That is fantastic. And very interesting. Agatha, do you know if that's intentional behavior right now, or is that a side effect? Oh, I'm hearing yes it is. Awesome. Well, if you ask for harder gameplay, you're going to get harder gameplay, I guess. John says, thank you very much for the answer. You're welcome. Hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully maybe you didn't realize the Hardened Traveler was available on all the servers, regardless of free-to-play or not, and you get a chance to play around with that. We've only recently, or I should say my character and Little Redhead's is very close, but my character has finally gotten to the maximum reputation level with the Path of Valor, which is fearless apparently, which allowed me to get the Hero Pose Epic. There are a couple of different emotes per level, so Fearless had the Epic Coin Flip and Epic Hero Pose. Coin Flip's fine, the Hero Pose is just fantastic. The Epic Lecture emote I'd forgotten about, but I should definitely pull it on up. Epic. _ Epic. Sure. The Epic Lecture, first of all, you can get it earlier than you can in gameplay if you're playing like we are, because normally this doesn't come until later in the game. But the Epic Lecture has both the lecture emote, and also you can see this floating page, although it's a little hard to see over all the snow. Let me go ahead and move out of there. We have this little page. We have the runic symbols floating around as we read from the page to our captive audience. It's great. Love it. And other ones are a little bit more short term. So, for instance, the Resist Epic. Just a short little thing. It's fine, but it doesn't take very long. The Epic Roar takes a little more roar and adds... Actually, you know what? I do use roar. No, I use charge. Yeah. This part of the problem is these are epic versions of things that I don't necessarily use very often in my gameplay. Charge and cheer I use all the time. So if there was an epic charge, that'd be fantastic. Cool. Yeah, so Coin Flip, Hero Pose, and Lecture. Those are definitely some of the harder to get ones here. Resist, Salute, Epic Shiver, Epic Succumb, and then when you're Stalwart, you can get these potions of morale, which is just restore 10% of your morale. That's not bad, but for Hero's Marks, I wasn't that enthusiastic about it. Once you have gotten anything else that you want, you can always spend Hero's Marks to get more Paths of Valor tokens. You can just consume these for reputation with the Paths of the Valor. But they do have a note that Enhanced Reputation Supply does not work with these tokens. Wah wah. Elixir of Heroism increases the rate that you're going to find your tokens of heroism. I find that I'm really bad at guessing when I'm about to be getting a lot of tokens of heroism. But if you are doing a lot of missions, a lot of skirmishes, you'll probably be getting a lot of them. So that's a good time for this. Landscape play, it's a little bit trickier to be like, okay, we're going to fight a lot, or we're going to be reading a bunch of quests. But In those cases, I have maxed out my tokens, had to alt to another character to spend them, because these quests, by the way, are weekly cooldowns instead of daily. And then come back in and done some more skirmishes or missions, and then filled up my 60 again, had to switch to a different character to spend them down. So I have a spreadsheet that tracks which ones are on which cooldown, because otherwise I can't keep track. Okay, awesome. Thank you, John, for asking about that. I'm glad your experience with the server is great. I haven't checked recently, but I'm not a Mordor. I can't check. But last time I was checking, I was getting a ping to the Mordor server of something like 10 milliseconds, which is not usually the case. In fact, if we come in here and check for the connection status, show that connection status. Oh, it's under here. Show that connection status in a better position. What do we got? Latency, 85 milliseconds. It's not terrible from here in Eastern Netherlands, but I imagine the further inland that you get, the more that number goes up. Cool. I'm going to hide that, though. Always lagging in chat says that they missed the game, but finding the time to commit to this game has been a lifelong struggle. I get it. Certainly, I go through phases where I have more time to spend and I have less time to spend. One of my reasons for wanting to stream about plugins in LOTRO was, it was like, well, at least I will have a couple hours each week where I make some progress on whatever plugin I'm working on, because I'm streaming about it. And then if I make no other progress for the rest of the week, that's okay. Okay, so we have birding log, and we are currently saving our time, and we want to come take a look at that. So we're going to go ahead and open up documents, LOTRO Rings Online, plugin data, account, server, character. Oh, that's in the wrong place. Character settings. And we can see the unload time was this. What we also want to do is track that zone. So I was trying to figure out where that was happening, but set zone. The zone dropdown is maybe going to be the best place for that. What do we have? We have a drop menu. So this was cloned from the fishing log plugin that Vinny had also made. And there are some places where perhaps the word fish was not replaced. Always Legend says, from what I understand, this is like a community stream account. This is the Twitch account that a lot of fans of the game are streaming on, and also a couple of employees of Standing Stone Games. Every Friday at noon Eastern time, Cordovan, the community manager, streams if he's not on vacation. And then there are occasional streams by other employees at Standing Stone Games. Sometimes it's a world designer. I'm going to get the names confused in my head. Which one was Severlin? Scenario, thank you. The other S word. Scenario, who is a world builder at Standing Stone Games, will every month or so do a stream visiting different regions and talking about the building process of the world. But that's his focus. So if people have questions about mechanistic things, or why does this class do this thing, that's not a question he can answer. Severlin sometimes shows up. He's the executive producer for Standing Stone Games. Thank you so much, Little Redhead, for keeping me straight on those names. And Severlin will sometimes show up with Cordovan, and they'll do a little Q&A, answering some community questions about what's going on with the game. So while most of the streamers here are not affiliated with SSG, but are just fans of the game who love sharing the game here on Twitch, or this video will be later hosted on YouTube as well, there are a couple of people here who are actual employees of SSG. And that should be pretty straightforward when you're watching the stream title, people in chat, you should get the sense of which one of those that is. But in general, it's a safe bet that they do not work for SSG and they don't have that. Little Redhead has put a link to me over on twitch.tv/my username, B4142135662. Just be aware, because of my busy life, I do not often stream over on my personal channel. But yeah, feel free. You are welcome to subscribe, of course. It may even tell you when I start streaming over on this channel if you're subscribed. But regularly, Tuesday, Little Redhead starts streaming at, I think, 11:30 Eastern Time, 11:30 in the morning, and then streams for about 2 to 3 hours, and then I just pick up right after she's done, and I stream until bedtime, essentially. So, yeah, feel free to follow me personally. It does not hurt my feeling, though, if you do not follow me personally. But it's lovely to have you here. The Ineffable Truth asks if I have any news from Moria. I have no more news than Little Redhead, which is to say I have no news. But I appreciate your enthusiasm. As Little Redhead said, my best guess right now is that they will settle into a pattern of about 4 months between content releases on Angmar and Mortar. That's my guess, my bet for very small amounts of money. Because Treebeard is on a 6-month release schedule, I just don't think, approximately 6 months, I don't think that they will pin Angmar and Mortar to that long of a release cycle. I think there's too many people who are too excited to get at the next thing. So that would be my guess, is 3 to 4 months between releases in general, but it might take them a little while to hit their stride. They might go a little longer or a little less long, depending on other things. Little Redhead was hypothesizing that they might be waiting to do a release to incorporate some of the new Nazgul mechanics. But I think we have so little information about what their goals are with that, I'll throw out there approximately 4 months after they release the servers, we're going to hear news about when the next one is, or it'll already have happened. But that's all I got, Ineffable. I appreciate your desire to know more. We've been there. When we first got started with Treebeard, Standing Stone Games wasn't quite in the rhythm yet of when they were going to do these updates. And so we were very much like, when's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? And finally, they settled into the system that's working for them, and those dates started showing up on the annual calendar. So I know they're not there yet. I just checked today. But I expect we are going to start seeing those release dates come out as they settle into the groove for Angmar and Mortar. But it's probably going to take them a release or two to sort out what feels good, what works for the community. If they don't already have that really solid. And I'm expecting they're looking at community feedback a lot for these two servers. Again, I have no inside knowledge, but there's a lot of new interesting things going on there, and it sparked a lot of people being very excited about the location of the servers, the Veil of the Nine mechanics, all of that. Always says, got to stream this game when you played it a few years back. Awesome. Well, you'd be welcome back if you find the time. Ineffable says, Legendary server made me come to the game. Totally new here. The opportunity to try from scratch is a great idea for an older game. Yeah, I agree, Ineffable. I found Treebeard really fit me very well because 6 months between release meant that I could just about experience the content that was available before the next release cycle. And faster releases, I got on Anor a little bit, but I just could not keep up. And in 6 months, I can just keep up. There's enough in my life that gives me like 3 to 4 months out of each 6 where I'm making meaningful progress through the storyline. And that's what drew me to Treebeard, absolutely. Always says, also, I'm a completionist, totally get it, which adds substantially to the aforementioned time investment. You're talking about a release to Xbox, and to my knowledge, there is no console release for Lord of the Rings Online, and there is no plan to do so. At the moment, it seems to be a Windows-only product for the foreseeable future. You do ask, is LOTRO on borrowed time? I think in the modern world, in this capitalist system that we're in, any online game does have that risk of enough people losing interest that there's no longer funding to keep meaningful development going. But the people at SSG, small team though they are, keep bringing out new features for the game, new areas of the world to explore, new storylines to engage with. So, if that is any indication, there seems to be a large enough community for Lord of the Rings Online to keep the game healthy in the near future. Who knows for the far future, though, of course, we have our fingers crossed here. But the ecosystem seems healthy enough to support a player base, to support these new servers, these fun things like the Veil of the Night mechanic, and to support new areas of the world like Umbar, which has just recently been released. The post-war stuff heading south. So no, I would personally not worry about LOTRO being on borrowed time. I got onto the Treebeard server when it first started on... Oh, my memory is going to fail here. LOTRO Legendary Server. On the wiki, there is a list of legendary servers when they happen. Cool, June 2021. So I jumped onto Treebeard June 2021, and we knew that they were aiming for approximately 6-month release schedules. And Fate of Gundabad had recently come... No, it hadn't even come out yet. Oh, that was coming to Anar. Fate of Gundabad, let's see. Had that recently come out? November 2021. So it came out same year as Treebeard. Cool. So Blood of Azog was probably the thing that had just come out, which I haven't engaged with at all. Yes, okay. June 8th and June 30th. So we had gotten to this part of the table. And so just looking at that, we could see, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 10 rows. That is 5 years of releases to get from Shadows of Angmar to where the game currently was, and we've moved past that now to Fate of Gundabad and Corsairs of Umbar. So we were looking at a minimum 5 year, probably more, to be able to successfully play the landscape content from the beginning to wherever the game was when we caught up. And I had no concern that SSG was going to be able to last that long so that I could get the full experience. And I still don't have that concern. So if that's any indication, if I would have no concern other than the time available in my life jumping onto Mordor and having a character on there be my main completionist character. Always Lagan asks, what was that thing a few months back where a lot of the DLCs went free and other things? I don't know the specific thing that you're talking about, but in general, Standing Stone Games will periodically make older content available to the free-to-play players. And recently, I believe the Before the Shadow content was made available to free-to-play players, and possibly something else. I've forgotten which, but I remember that there was such an announcement. And that's just a case of when new stuff comes out, it's the new shiny stuff, and that's how Lord of the Rings Online and Standing Stone Games to some extent stays in business, is they entice people to want to pay money for the product. If everyone was free to play, they would not have a way to pay the electricity bill unless they monetized it in some other way. So they're always counting on some people being free to play players and some people paying money in some way, usually through the monthly subscriptions. Which is the main way that myself and Little Redhead, who is streaming before me, that's our main way of contributing to the ecosystem. So thousands of players, all of them doing monthly subscriptions, helps offset the people who can't or don't want to do those subscriptions. But free-to-play players are still an important part of the ecosystem. People playing the game together, that's part of the whole point of an MMO. And so Standing Stone Games periodically expands what is available to free-to-play players. When content has, when an expansion or something has been out for a couple of years, it tends to trickle on into what's available for everyone. So I don't know if that's what you're specifically thinking about, but that's what's up. Cardboard Zero says, it's an old World of Warcraft player. I don't really mind subscriptions. Yeah, My introduction to games like World of Warcraft and other online games was that there was an expectation that you were going to pay a monthly fee, and that was going to pay both to keep the lights on, keep the servers running, and pay for new development of the game. And it was a bit of a mind twist when Lord of the Rings Online and other games went to having a free-to-play model where you could get some but not all of the stuff. But it definitely seems to be an attractive way to play, and it definitely gives people an onboard into the game. You want to try out Lord of the Rings Online, you just have to download the file and wait for the patch, and you're in, right? You make an account, you do not have to pay any money, and there are some people who play the whole game without paying any money. It's challenging to do that because you do have to have a way to get those in-game LOTRO points in order to unlock all the stuff that's not available to free-to-play players, but there's so much that is available to free-to-play players, you can occupy a lot of spare time in your life just with that. Always says, so is Treebeard like a release of already released DLC, so it feels like you're playing as it was coming out? Yeah, so what you can see on the screen here is content releases, and these are the things that are going to arrive on a Legendary server when it hits that point. So right now, Mordor and Angmar are at the Shadows of Angmar point. This is the part of the world that was available when the game was first released back before Mines of Moria came out. But this isn't like a classic server in World of Warcraft where they've gone back to the code as it was, to the state of the game as it was. This is the all the modern systems of the game, all the bug fixes and improvements to the game, changes in how things like the trait system works, all of that. What's gated is your access to regions. So you walk into Enedvaith, and it'll say, you're not allowed to be here. Get out, or we're going to kick you out. But it's not traveling back into time 17 years ago in that sense. It's just a much smaller world, a very approachable world as far as I'm concerned. So it's not rewinding the clock on the code and the state of the game, but it is constraining where you have available to you. Which if you're a completionist like I am, that's perfect because it gives you a much more obtainable goal of, cool, I'm going to go level 1 to 50, I'm going to complete the Shire and Breland and Trollshaws and basically the first page of the Eriador deed log here, but I don't have to worry about Ravanian, Moria, and everything else, or Gondor, or Mordor, or Haradwaith. I can just set my goal a little bit smaller. So I found that very useful. When Angmar and Mordor get to that release point, maybe it'll be 4 months after August 1st, maybe it'll be longer or shorter, they're going to get the Mines of Moria content, which, as the name implies, gives you access to Mines of Moria, and the legendary item system, and that also unlocks at the same time. The next thing they'll get is the Siege of Mirkwood, which includes both Siege of Mirkwood and I believe extending down to Enedvaith, but probably not Dunland. I'd have to double check on that. And so on and so forth. When Treebeard gets its next release, which is planned for, I think, early December, it'll be extending beyond the Siege of Minas Tirith into up to including the Battle of the Black Gate, but not including Mordor. Ineffable appreciates the idea, isn't finding WoW Classic as interesting as like it was, but new is far better for them. Awesome. I know people who go both ways, but that's just the way it is. Blizzard had enough money, time, and interest in resurrecting code as it was. That's not where SSG wanted to go with it. Always Leggin says, very cool. Is Treebeard a server you need a subscription for? Yes. Any of the legendary servers, so that's currently Treebeard, Angmar, and Mordor, require you to have a subscription of some sort in order to log into them. And that's controlled at your launcher screen. So you run the launcher and it gives you a list of servers. And if you do not have a subscription active on your account, it just won't let you enter that server. As we can see, the full list of them used to include Anor, Ithil, and Shadowfax. Those servers have run to completion now or have been closed early in the case of Ithil. So it's just Angmar, Mordor, and Treebeard. Elzlagan, yeah, says, okay, gotcha. Is Treebeard further along? Yep. what they're showing in this table here is the date at which the server has reached the specific thing being released. So we can see Treebeard on May of 2024 got access to this section, Western, Central, Eastern Gondor, and the Siege of Minas Tirith, which includes South Lothlorien and Osgiliath. But we can see that Mordor and Angmar are still back at the Shadows of Angmar level. So they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 releases before they would be caught up to Treebeard, but we can assume Treebeard will have advanced at least a little by then. Yeah, Angmar and Mordor are on that first release, Shadows of Angmar. That includes level 1 to 50 content. And tell you what, let me see if I can find my favorite map. Gotta find a link to it. There's a map over on Reddit. I don't know how updated it is. There we go. But this is a map of all the interconnected zones of Lord of the Rings Online. And I'd kind of like to have something between those two zoom levels. All right. So this is, just a combining all the maps together into a bigger world and then showing you the level ranges for each of those zones. So Shire 1 to 15, Breeland 1 to 24, Wildwood 45 to 50. So the Shadows of Angmar content that's available on Angmar and Mordor right now is basically Eriador, as far south as Mines of Moria. Can I open that? No, I can't. Oh well. And so if you try to go into Moria, you won't be able to. If you try to go south of Rhaegion, you will be able to into Swanfleet and Swanfleet, but not into Enidvaith. It'll just stop you from doing that. I think you'll have access to Rhaegion. Yeah, you must. Maybe? Maybe not. Cardboard is coming at WoW Classic from the other side. It's saying it's only relevant as a version as it was, because new WoW was exactly what made people going back to it after all. I haven't played World of Warcraft in so long that I couldn't speak intelligently on the game as it is. Dan Olson at Folding Ideas had a really interesting breakdown of how Classic WoW compared to current WoW. And why it was a compelling experience for so many people. So if you're at all curious about such things and you're not already in the know, maybe check that out over on the YouTube. Always says my favorite class and race is Stout Axe Brawler. Does that mean I couldn't use that in those legendary servers? No. That's where the way the legendary server works is it locks out kind of expansions, but not necessarily some of those features like class or race selections from those expansions. Oh, you found the map confusing. You're only made it to Breeland with your 10x. So the way this map is useful, and don't use it if it's confusing. Where did I put it? The way this map is useful is answering the question, I wonder where I should be right now. Now, I find the epic story, the epic quest to be very useful in answering that question. But there's a lot of people who are like, hey, I'm level 47. Where should I be questing? I finished off Abendim. I don't know where to go. And you can kind of glance at this and say, okay, maybe you should be in Forhel. Maybe you should be in Misty Mountains or Angmar. Wait, Misty Mountains down here. And it makes for an easy kind of visual reference of what's going on. But I think if you have a subscription, if you have access to the Stout Axe anyway, I think it's available on the Legendary servers. They're blocking access to certain regions of the game, but I think those classes and races are available. If anyone knows for sure in chat, feel free to chime in. Ariel says, yeah, if you needed to buy it in the shop or to buy an expansion to unlock them, then that might still be true on the Legendary server. Always says, do people like run out of quests? I've never not had quests to do. I don't know that people run out of quests, but I suspect LOTRO is very generous with its experience. Um, and so it's very easy if you do not use a Stone of the Tortoise, if you are not on Treebeard where you get less experience, it's very easy to out-level an area very quickly. To be in the Lone Lands at level 20 and suddenly you're level 35 and you're like, wow, I'm super higher level than everything here and I'm not very interested in engaging with things that are gray to me. I want to go engage with things that are harder or quests that are my level. So I think that's probably more what's happening. For those who don't know, you can buy an in-game item called Stone of the Tortoise that just disables, I think it's, no, Stone, where is it? Stone of the Tortoise, here we go. No. So this just disables any experience gain, which I find very useful because I do like being the same level as the zone I'm in, as the creatures I'm encountering, and as the quests that I'm doing. And so I will use this to stop from overleveling. If I'm attacking things that are level 25 and I'm level 27, stone goes on until I've moved into an area that correlates with my level, and then the stone comes off. That was more of a concern during the Shadows of Angmar, where you have a 50 level range gap. If you go from Mines of Moria to Siege of Mirkwood, where there's a 5 level gap, everything's going to be not gray to you. It doesn't matter. But especially in the early days, if you're not using this, it's super easy to out level an area because LOTRO is very generous with its experience. It's not a grind to level up per se. And I think that's where people are coming from. They're like, suddenly everything's great to me. Where should I be instead of this? If you were following the quest line, if you were following all of the vectors from place to place, they would eventually get to places with higher level creatures and quests. But I think they're looking to kind of short circuit that step and just be like, okay, let's get to where I want to be right now. So that's what I'm suspecting is going on, not just running out of quests. Because no, it's very difficult to run out of quests. There's a bazillion of them. There's real numbers, and they're in the thousands. Cardboard says, I joined LOTRO only a couple days ago thanks to a YouTube video in my timeline playing a Stout Axe Guardian. Awesome. Well, welcome. And they had to unlock the Stout Axe. Okay. Nice. On Mortar. Okay, but you are able to play on Mortar. Well, awesome. Thanks for chiming in with that. Not Scum says, Angmar, I remember the pain, a lot of pain. I actually enjoy the Angmar region, not necessarily for the aesthetics of, the miserable place that it is, but the storyline and the challenge of it I do enjoy. And you do actually go through different landscapes. You have the swamp of the Malinhead. You have the rocky hills on the west. You have the circle of despair or pain or whatever it is over on the northeast. And of course you have Carndum, which is an instance that I absolutely adore playing through. So it's a region that I actually do enjoy, but not because it's a fun place to be. Like, the Shire is a fun place to be. Angmar is not a fun place to be, but it is a fun place for me to play through. Link to that map. Can do. Zone map. There you go. I'm in chat. Always says, oh yeah, I outleveled very fast. The game is honestly a little boring when you're just waltzing through everything. You did get the Stone of the Tortoise. Yeah, so there's a couple different ways you can approach that. Stone of the Tortoise will definitely help with the experience. If you're finding you want a more challenging experience fighting monsters, as we mentioned before on this stream, go talk to a hardened traveler and consider a higher difficulty level, and you'll find fights with mobs more challenging on landscape. Once you start difficulty 3, you're going to start getting red boxes of doom on the ground underneath you. It's going to really, if you're anything like me, you're really going to up your game on moving out of boxes. Whereas before, I was a little blasé about them. Now I'm super responsive to a red box showing up underneath my character, and I'm just out of there. So Let's see. Notscom says, in the Legendary server, you can have Legendary Weapon once the Legendary server reaches the Mines of Moria expansion, which is where Treebeard is and Angmar and Mordor are not yet. Then absolutely, you'll get access to Legendary Weapons. We can see my legendary item here, which is Singer of Songs, and all the various things that are on it. Yeah, and Real Tough says that as well. It's not there yet, but it will be. Always Lagan says, is the plugin ever heard of that? If you're talking about the landscape difficulty, no. This is a mechanic that's relatively new. It started on Treebeard and Shadowfax, and once it was kind of proved to be desirable and stable, it was brought to all of the servers. So just talk to a hardened traveler. You'll find them in all the different starting areas in the Shire. It's in Little Delving. Here in Eredlune, it's just outside Thorin's Hall. I think the one in Archet is just by the Archet, in the Archet gate area by the other trainers. Couldn't tell you the other ones off the top of my head. I was like, commented on going back to the Shire for a 1 to 15 zone after doing Eredlune. Cupboard pointed out you don't have to do that, but I was liking it, and I totally get this. As a completionist, wanted to do all the quests. I get it. So yeah, the Stone of the Tortoise, definitely recommended. Hardened Traveler, if you're looking for a more difficult combat experience, recommended as well. And yes, one of you mentioned decided to take me away from plugins. Hey, I am here to answer questions. If people want to ask them about LOTRO, it's okay if it distracts me from plugins. I feel like we've made some good progress already just talking about things. Awesome. Yeah, as someone who is a completionist, I very much like being able to go through my deed log and see all of the deeds are completed. And Swanfleet and Cardelon has all the delving deeds, so that's going to be a long one. But the other regions, it's nice to have them all checked off except for the roving threats. Do you need a subscription for Hardened? No, I believe it's available for everyone on every server. It's just an optional opt-in. If you do it before your character is level 11, then you opt into some deeds that award you with an account-wide title. And so you can do it on any character, on any server, and all of your characters will get it. The difficulty is that you must keep your difficulty level at or higher than a specific level for the entire journey to level 50 for the first set of the deeds and 130 for the second set of the deeds. And so if you are at difficulty level 1 for the entire time from when you pick it up to level 50, you'll qualify for one of the deeds. And then if you're at difficulty 3 or higher for the entire travel from 1 to 50, you'll get both the lesser and the greater version of those deeds. And then there's another pair at 130. So Affidel here is attempting to take difficulty 3 or greater from 1 to 130. And we're at level 100, so we're almost there, kind of. Realtaf thinks that Swanfleet is the best starting area. I've gone through Swanfleet and Carline once, but I was overleveled because I wasn't using it as a starting area. And I think that kind of damped down on the enjoyment of it a little bit because, yeah, sometimes it's fun to be challenged, and a level 50 plus, maybe 60 or 70 at that point, waltzing through Swanfleet and Carline, like, it was fun. It was fun to engage with the storyline, but it wasn't as meaningful as if I'd done it on level. Anyway, always lagging. I find the easiest one to get because I have a Return to Thorin's Gate skill. I just pop in here and the Hardened Traveler is right here, but you'll be able to find them in a couple different places. The wiki will have the complete list, but there's one in each of the starting areas. Cardboard also thinks that Swanfleet is the best starting area. I get that. When I'm making a character and I don't want to be thinking about it, I'll often go through the Shadows of Angmar starting just because I can run a Hobbit through that half distracted by other things and sorting my inventory, and I can do it on autopilot, which is nice if all I'm doing is trying to make a character. And I made a couple of those on Mordor, but if I want to be having to think about it more, I'll Shadows of Angmar, Swanfleet Before the Shadows works. All right, awesome, great questions, thank you. Rogue says, is there a way to see what quests have not been completed or deeds that have not been unlocked yet? Like, is there some NPC in a super secret hidey spot that you never come across? So, to answer your question, there is currently a plugin. We'll go ahead and install it. So I'm going to the LOTRO Plugin Compendium. Oh, I already had one open. And we're going to go ahead and add Deed Tracker, which is a plugin that I make and maintain. And we're going to go ahead and come into our plugin manager, hit that green arrow to refresh, because otherwise LOTRO doesn't pay attention to new plugins. And then we're going to go ahead and load Deed Tracker. Deed Tracker is meant to be a companion to your in-game deed log. And it will track, it will go ahead and mark off deeds that are completed as long as Deed Tracker is loaded at the time that you complete a deed. Unfortunately, plugins don't have any direct access to your list of completed deeds or quests, but they can keep an eye on them as they happen. However, there's also a third-party program that you could download called LOTRO Companion, and it does have the ability to go ahead and import that information, kind of pick at LOTRO and figure out what's going on. And using the information that it extracts, we can go ahead and use a tool that Deed Tracker comes with. This is not a LOTRO Companion tool. Don't bother them if you have problems. But if we come into Documents, Lord of the Rings Online, Plugins, Cube Plugins, Deed Tracker, click the wrong one, import Deed Completion from LOTRO Companion, then we can go ahead and say, hey, Treebeard, Affodil, import. Fantastic. And then the next time Deed Tracker is loaded, it's just going to say, hey, you got a bunch of deeds that Deed Tracker doesn't think are checked off. Would you like to check them off? In this case, there's 1,715 completed deeds that Affodil has done. Awesome. Let's go ahead and mark those all complete. And then we get a much more accurate sense of our completion status as far as deeds are concerned. We can see 100% in Brelandshire, Eredluin, Lonelands, Trollshaw, Eregion, and Avith and Dunland. And the one that I'm missing in these other ones, oh, it's a little hard to see. I'm going to go ahead and hide completed deeds. We can see roving threats of Misty Mountains, Avendim, Angmar, North Downs, and then of course all the delvings of Swanfleet and Cardolan. So those are the ones I haven't done yet. Because of landscape difficulty, roving threats are proving to be a little bit of a challenge on level. Coming into Ravania, Southern Mirkwood also has roving threats, but the rest of that's good. And we're coming into Gondor, and this is where we're actually playing through with our Slotro group on Saturdays, and so we're working our way through Gondor right now. So yes, Deed Tracker is there. It'll tell you what's available, even if you haven't unlocked it. So for instance, what is a good for instance? There is a deed called In a Pear Tree that we do have available to us that I need to remember to do, which is to eat the pear-based delicious meals 5 times. Now, there is a option here for experimental tooltips. I'm going to go ahead and enable that. And so we can see for this one, if my character uses partridge pie, or eats partridge pie, bacon wrapped roast partridge, partridge hot pot, baked beans with partridge, and partridge in a pear tree, pear treat 5 times each, then I will complete the In a Pear Tree deed. And that will not show up in my race and social deed page until I start it. Then it will show me my progress on it, maybe. That one might be a hidden deed. Always Laggin says, what's your tune? If you're asking about this character here, this is a Hobbit Minstrel. Rogue says, that's amazing. I've never used plugins before, so I will Google and learned. Rogue, this is outdated, but still pretty accurate. Instructions for Deed Tracker. Link that I'm putting into chat there. And there is linked from there steps on how to do that import from LOTRO Companion. I'll go ahead and put a link there. Import steps. So if those are not enough information, and reviewing this video and watching how I blaze through those steps doesn't help, feel free to come back next Tuesday. I'm here most every Tuesday in this time slot. Let's see. And Neffable says, so cool, and any other plugin like that. The other plugin that is similar to that, but has a little bit of a different objective, is the LOTRO Compendium, which is not the same as the LOTRO Plugin Compendium, but if you search for Compendium, you will find it, and it acts as an in-game database of things. And it will track your completion maybe just of quests, I think. So when you load that up, it will go ahead and give you a way to see all of the quests. So if I just want to see the quests in, let's see, a zone, all of the Angmar quests. Cool. This is a list of all the Angmar quests. And if I wanted to, I could go ahead and check things off. They're gray because they're under my level. And we can see there's 239 quests listed here, which sounds like too many for Angmar. I'm uncertain why there's so many. Oh, task. All the task quests count. Awesome. Fascinating. Always Lagan says, awesome, tried using a wiki previously and that was awful. I have thoughts from time to time of doing a quest tracker like the deed tracker, but I haven't really gotten around to it. And I keep having other things that I want to do as well, so there is definitely a limited time for that. And everyone says, so cool, and we finally talk about plugins. Excellent. Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, so yes, deed tracker is very useful if you want to know what deeds are available, even if you haven't started them. And if you enable the experimental tooltips, you'll often get a lot of information about what's required. This is sort of automatically generated though, so sometimes you might just want to go back to the normal tooltip, which for anything before Fate of Good and Bad probably has something useful in there. Complete the year 1 through year 10 Tales cards for Anniversary Event. Cool, okay. Observer of Durin's Day. Complete the quest Durin's Day upon Erebor. What's experimental say? Observe Durin's Day before the old secret door up on the side of Mount Erebor. Alright, fair enough. Oftentimes you'll just get captains who will summon people to that, but I imagine there's a quest line that takes you up there at some point so you know where it is. Cool. So that's Deed Tracker. That's the LOTRO Compendium, which is an in-game database of lots of things. So yeah, enjoy, have fun. I find it's most easy to use the LOTRO Plugin Compendium to do your installs, and that's what I've been using here in the back. The LOTRO Plugin Compendium, you just type in what you want. Let's say I want Festival Buddy 2. You check it, you say add, you can see at the bottom here it says it's downloading, it's extracting, it's done installing. It's that easy. Doing it manually, you have to be a little bit more careful about downloading a file, extracting it, making sure the files end up in the right place. And you can do it all manually. Most of the plugins will actually include steps of here's how to install it manually. And most of them will also say go use LOTRO Companion, or you can use LOTRO Plugin Compendium. Yeah, you don't have to. You can always do it manually. I find it's not worth the time, generally. LOTRO Plugin Compendium is going to make sure the files end up in the right place, and that's nice. Okay, awesome. What's up with... Oh, fish, right. That was the shortcut there. Awesome. Create the weapon, field slot... shield label. Awesome. Create a set location button. Great. Create a zone menu button. Okay, this is a drop menu. This is what we want. Zone menu, click for build menu. Awesome. So we want to find out what is affecting the zone menu. So we're going to come on in to, there we go. This is where we set that text to whatever. So we're going to go ahead and say turbine.shell.writeLine setting zone to, and we're going to go ahead and dump out whatever this is. And we can see setting zone to quote, well, I'm doing the quotes, aerodrome, that's the string. That's perfect. Bims asks, do you feel like you have learned a ton about the API since starting this that isn't really in the API docs? What a great question. There are a couple of undocumented things in the API. Yep. But what is really useful is being more comfortable with the idioms that the API is using and having resources for how to use parts of the API that aren't spelled out in the API documentation. So for instance, if you go to the tree view class here in the documentation, there's an example of how to set up a tree view and populate it with nodes such that if you plugged this into a plugin, you would get something in the game that does the thing, that shows you how it works and why it works. And that's fantastic. But it's also kind of the exception. If I come into list box, I get a little bit of that. That's cool. Button, yep, there's an example. But some of the more rare things you might do might not have that. That's a good question. Can I find an example that doesn't have that? I click on window, I do not get that. What about scroll bar? I click on scroll bar, I don't get that. Button? Yeah, button, I don't get that. So there are samples in the documentation, but not as many as I would like. And so when it comes to using some of these things, sometimes the easiest way is to find a plugin that already uses it and figure out, what are you doing to make this work? And the more plugins you develop, the more likely you are to have that in your own code, or to have done this already so you have an idea of, oh, I know Travel Window does this, or I know Waypoint does this, or I know this other one does this. And so building up that repository of where can I borrow these ideas from, where can I get inspiration from, has been an important part of my development journey for plugins in Lord of the Rings Online. So filling in those blanks where the documentation doesn't really tell you what to do with a button, at least not in that place. But if you know to go to the core button one, you might find some more information, filling in these things. Most things that you can do with the API are documented in some way, either here or in, I want to say Garen's seminal post about LOTRO plugins for noobs over on the forums. Could have been Thorolore. I'll have to double check on that. In fact, do I have it here? Garen. Fantastic. If you're interested in writing plugins, there's a lot of great information. Writing plugins post. Check that out. It's definitely worth stepping through for a lot of those examples and rationales that might be missing in the API. So yeah, it's not that the API is missing how to do a thing most of the time, like the actual function calls or the actual variables are there, but how to use them, how to use them well, that can be missing. I was like, says, would someone be so kind to define API? Sure. Application Programming Interface is what API tends to mean. You might find some variations on that theme. And what it really means is the contract that a program, a service, something will publish that says, here's how to talk to me. Here's how to interact with me. And in the context of Lord of the Rings Online, it's the contract by which a plugin can interact with the state of the game. LOTRO says, here is how you can ask how much health, how much morale the player has. Here's how you can ask what piece of equipment they are holding in their primary weapon slot. Here's how you can ask what's in their inventory. Here's how you can put something into the standard chat log if you want to, output some information. Here's how you can make a window appear on the screen. So an API, an application programming interface, in the context of writing plugins, is how you go beyond simple things like 1 + 1 = 2 and interact with the game in some way. Oh, the player took some damage. I would like to make the screen flash red. Cool, here's how to know if the player took damage. Here's how to put a window up on the screen that is red and then make it go away. Those are the interfaces, the API. Those are the places where the API comes into play. So hopefully that's useful information. Ben says, neat, wonder how they learn just by experimenting. There is similarity to how to make things happen in a LOTRO plugin that are true in other places as well. If you want to build this user interface and you have experience building user interfaces in Qt and C++, you're probably going to have some sense of familiarity. Oh, I need to make a button, move it here, describe what to happen in its event handler. So there are definitely skills that you're going to have if you have any other experience writing programs, writing user interfaces that are going to seem a little familiar here. If you have experience in Java, if you have experience in C++, if you have experience in C#, whatever language you might have experience writing user interfaces in, you're going to find some translatable skills to writing code to make a window show up and put stuff on the window. And just like in those other platforms, usually, if you say, I would like a window to show up, you do not have to then write the code to make the window move around when someone clicks on it and drags it. That's just what a LOTRO skinned window does. You get that for free. But if you have your own control, whoa, I forgot I did that. Hang on, let me unlock that and resize it. If you have your own control, like this opaque window tracker, my goodness, I would like to resize you, please. It doesn't get all of this for free. You have to write the code that says, when I click and drag and move the mouse, the window also needs to move. A normal window, you can get the resize for free. If you just have your own not LOTRO branded window, you have to do the resizing logic. So how much code you're going to write kind of depends on how much you're going to reuse the tools that LOTRO is providing you for a LOTRO branded window that has the blue title bar and the little filigree things and the silvery corner bits. Or if you want to have total control over it, then you have to start providing those things like the ability to close this window does not exist. Like there's no little X button in the upper right window because I didn't write one. Whereas normal windows do have that ability. So yeah, BIMs, a lot of people coming to writing a plugin will probably have some experience in writing some other programs, and that's going to give them some knowledge about how to work. But then, yeah, there's a lot of looking and seeing how other things work. Like, oh, I want to do this thing, and this other plugin does something similar. Cool, how do they do it? Awesome, now I know how they do it, and now I can do it. Kind of by definition, plugins need to be readable by humans. Now, that doesn't mean it's easy to read. Some it's possible to write code that's very inscrutable. But the nature of these plugins is that anyone can go in and read them and see how it works. And that's pretty cool, I think. It allows the community to share these ideas, even if it's just, oh, I wonder how that plugin did that. That's pretty cool. So for instance, when dtracker, I wanted to know where you were in the world so that we could resolve some ambiguities between, Warg Slayer, where on earth is that? And I knew that Titan Bar would show you what region you were in. So I was like, okay, how does Titan Bar know what region you are in? And the answer was, it looks at your regional chat channel. When that changes, it knows that you've moved to a new region. Awesome. We can take advantage of that, except there are some subtleties to that Titan bar didn't have to care about, because all it was doing was showing you what that was. It wasn't doing logic based off of that. And when it turns out there's a different region for Bree Town than for Bree Land, suddenly D-Tracker does care about that. But standing on the shoulders of giants, we can say, okay, now we know how to tell what regional chat channel we're in. Now we can build on top of that. So lots of standing on the shoulders of other plugin developers going on here. Baz says, that's why I put all my code in one file, one line, and obfuscate variable names. I have to hide my secrets. I mean, you joke, but this is... I actually reformatted this code to make it easier to read, kind of instinctively. Yeah, we can go ahead and put that back. Yeah, you joke a little bit, but this is not necessarily easy to read code right here. It's very concise code, to be sure, but you know, I have to think about it when I'm looking at these things. There's not necessarily very verbose variable names going on, and it's fine. Like, it's definitely decodable, but I have to think about it while I'm looking at it. There's not a lot of comments there, and yeah, it's pretty dense. So, like, what's going on here? I have to look at it for a minute to figure it out. It's possible to write things like that. I prefer to write more verbose stuff that gives future me a chance of looking at it and being like, what was past me thinking? What were they doing? So I tend to use much more verbose things. Like, that could have been SWC, but it's stopwatch controls. And that just makes it hopefully easier for future me to understand what I was doing. Yeah, so it's possible to write more clearly or less clearly, but it's also very subjective. Like, if you happen to know that you're talking about coordinate systems, then you don't have to be any more verbose than LX, LY, OX, OY. Like, that's fine for that specific domain stuff. But that's also why I would tend to wrap that up into a library somewhere and not have that in my main.lua file. You know, different tastes, though. Coding, it's very much a subjective thing. Awesome. Well, I've been blathering on here for a while. We're approaching, rapidly approaching the 3-hour mark, well past the 2-hour mark. So I think now's a great time to start wrapping things up. I guess if you've got any last minute questions, comments, concerns, toss it into chat there. Otherwise, come on back next week and we'll get into it again, or stick around for the next streamer today, who I believe is on at 9 p.m. Eastern time, but I would have to check that schedule. I wonder if that is Tuesdays. Tuesday. There we go. Mei Long, I think, would be next, but I would have to check the schedule. All right, so we were looking at zone menu, and we were seeing that here is where we are setting that to. So if we go ahead and save that to the settings, just like we were doing here, character setting, there we go, character setting region equals this same thing. So we're going to go ahead and save that. And then the final thing that we need to do is sorry, I'm trying to decide where is the plugin going to be looking for the region? So a bird's found by a zone. So if we find a bird, and what would that look like? I've forgotten already. No, not gathered. Oh no, it scrolled off. All right. Let's find another bird. Oh no. Let's find another bird with the birding hobby set. Oh, did it stop? It might have stopped. Okay. It's very sensitive to you changing things around. Okay. Got it first. Spotted the second. And the third. Okay, what are we going to see? Saw a clip. Okay, saw a. Great. Where are we? We're in main. Saw a whatever. Awesome. If look string. Okay, where is that? Fascinating. Okay, where's print? Oh, it's basic.loo. That's where their functions are. No. Okay, they're just using that. Why are they using that? We're not using that because we're not getting there because this returns. That is so weird. Okay, so the lock string is definitely needs to get set. All right, well, I think it's going to take me a little bit longer to finish that off. Then says kind words. Always Lagan asks a question that I don't think I have time for to answer, but in general, SSG does not regulate plugins. LOTRO interface tries to pay attention to what's being uploaded and scans them for malicious content and so on. But it is good to be careful. Plugins that are loaded from within Lord of the Rings Online are sandboxed, so they can't do a lot of things. They can't do arbitrary internet communication. They can't look at files on your system outside of your plugin data directory in the documents Lord of the Rings Online location. So they're very much restricted on what they can do, and LOTRO keeps them in that sandbox. So if you're running a downloaded plugin through Lord of the Rings Online, that is a very safe thing to do. A plugin could do, the most malicious thing a plugin could do would be to overwrite the save files of other plugins, or maybe to do something that causes your LOTRO client to close to desktop. And in general, plugin developers don't do that, and in general, well-recommended plugins are likely to behave well. But could there be a malicious or mischievous plugin author? Absolutely, there could be. But I think other plugin developers try to be good stewards of the community's time and attention. And I was like asked about cheats and such. A plugin is very restricted in what it can do for Lord of the Rings Online. A plugin cannot activate any of your skills, and in general, a plugin can present skills for you to activate, but you have to be the one to click with your mouse on the plugin. Plugins are very restricted on how they can react to keyboard input. In general, there's no way to assign a key and have just the plugin respond to it. A plugin can know that you pressed a different key, like my 1 button for birding, but it can't intercept it or stop it from doing whatever else. It just can do something in addition to whatever else you were going to do. So in general, if a plugin lets you do it, you are not cheating and it's fine. Yeah, that's pretty much it. If LOTRO has let the plugin API do a thing, then it's fine. And in general, if a plugin is well recommended, it is probably not doing anything mischievous. That being said, I do recommend every so often, if you have a if you are using plugins and you are concerned about such things, just back up your plugin data directory in your documents, Lord of the Rings Online. Just copy that somewhere else once a month or something. Just occasionally make a backup of that. Your key map and your user preferences files, I would back those up as well, because things can happen. Those files can get corrupted or accidentally deleted or whatnot. And it's nice to just have a backup so you don't have to reconstruct your user interface settings from scratch, for instance. A thing to watch out for is if you are closing your LOTRO client and it has disappeared but is still thinking in the background, and you start up a new LOTRO launcher, if they're both trying to interact with your user preferences file at the same time, then the launcher will be like, oh, I can't touch that. The file doesn't exist. I'll start from scratch, which is a reasonable thing for it to do, but it then wipes out whatever settings you had in there. So just make a backup of it every month or two, and then if that happens or anything else happens, you can just restore and it's fine. It doesn't have to be anything malicious. Accidents happen. So think about that. Go ahead and back up your plugin data directory once in a while, and you'll be fine. Okay. Kind words. Once you eventually decide to commit 6 years of your life to this game, you'll be using a lot of the advice. Awesome. Well, welcome no matter how much time you spend in it. Okay. Well, with that being said, yeah, that's everything we're going to cover today. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of LOTRO plugins. I hope to see you here next week. And until then, keep plugging along. All right. Bye-bye now.